Well, guess where you're called? To minister hope. To minister in such a way that they realize God hasn't given up on them. But sometimes it takes time, energy. Sometimes you have to give up privacy. It can be really hard at times. So I'm going to pray that you see enough of the fruit that you'll not grow weary in your well-doing. And there are so many other things that you think, I could be enjoying this much more than this. Thank you, Lord, that it's going to be larger than they would anticipate. It's going to be a greater work than they would even consider. And it's beyond you to be able to bring it to pass. But it's the Lord who shall accomplish it all for his purpose. And just as we are his workmanship, so this will be his workmanship. So God be blessed through you from here on, more powerfully than ever before. Amen.
So what part you want to take apart? Huh? Yes. What part do you want to take apart? What wrench? Grab a wrench, man. Let's go to town. Good afternoon, Richard. How are you? This here is Uganda's version of the King Daddy toolbox. $1,000 US. Don't get me started. The mechanic who, as I found out, is a guy who just owns a toolbox because there's no real qualification to be a mechanic. Instead of diagnosing what the problem is, they replace things as the solution. They replace the motor with a different motor. I asked Joseph, I said, when they put a different motor in, do they have things like remanufactured motors here? And he said, no, they just take a motor out of another car and put it in. And I said, so the motor they put in can have 500,000 miles and you wouldn't know it? And he said, yes, I guess so. Cheryl and I were blessed to have been able to build our house, and I was the general contractor. And after we built it, you know, we had a large family. We knew that that there might be more potentially, and we finished building the house, furnished the house completely, and then Cheryl would she would take the kids to school, come home, the house would be empty, I was at work, and nobody would be in there but her. She would clean everything up, it would be spotless, everything would be great. And then she just decided one day, she said, you know, is this all there is to life, is just to have a big house and nice stuff, and, you know, is that kind of it? She felt kind of empty, and she kept praying to the Lord, Lord, surely there's more to life than this.
It was a prayer at my kitchen sink that changed everything. We finished decorating the house, put the kids in school, and for the first year that they were in school, I actually was, well, maybe it wasn't a year, but for quite a while, because we actually donated all of our old furniture to our school, which was funny because the kids, having been homeschooled, they felt totally at home. So they would go up to the school, and I was there all the time, I mean, making sure they were doing fine. But we also volunteered a lot of hours that year because it was hard to leave them. I'd had them home with me forever. I mean, Abigail was starting kindergarten, but my other kids, we had homeschooled for 20 years. You know, my whole life from morning to night until was devoted on my kids. I mean, we got up, we had Bible time, we did school, everything we did was together. If I went to the store, they went with me. I never went anywhere by myself. I just loved having them with me. And so anyway, we put them in school, and then after I finally felt comfortable, I started coming home and I would straighten up the house and I would start the laundry, or I would go to the grocery store, I would run errands, and then I would end up in the kitchen. And I always had worship music playing, and would finish up kitchen, and I would just realize, okay, it's 9:30 in the morning, now what? I mean, I love our home. It's beautiful to me, and it's a blessing. I mean, our friends can come, we have all kinds of room for our kids. It's a blessing to live here. It's stress-free because there's a place for everything. I mean, it's just stress-free, but it's hay and stubble. And that's what it came down to, is this is hay and stubble. Yes, it's a blessing, but it's not gonna last for eternity. And I don't think I panicked about it, but I had a serious journey of, Lord, I don't want this to be what my life is about. I would be in tears. There were so many days I was in tears. Do not let my life be about this.
That's when she finally was convinced the Lord was telling her that we should look at adopting children. And she specifically said, from Uganda.
This is our town. It's called Kasanja, Bufumbanswa village, 23 kilometers from Kampala city center. So here, this is, they are burning trash. Suubi project first, it hired one of the rooms for a store at first, and now it is being used as a clinic there. So that is also a small premise where we can buy some kind of sauce. We have cabbage, we have avocados, we have tomatoes, green peppers. This is a new boutique. People can be able to buy clothes. We have rice, we have sugar.
I sell sodas, plastic sodas, and the surface. These ones, the for food. This is posho and rice and cassava flour and sugar. Then this one is salt. It helps because most people, staff there, they are now employed from the project, and they have helped them for the development of this area because of their power now. Before Suubi, these people of this area, they had no power. But now they are developing.
People can come and rent some of these rooms. People can can hire them and like put stores. Land gained the value ever since this project brought electricity in this village. So land has gained the value in this area. It's expensive, and many people are yearning and willing to buy land around in this area. This is just because of power, electricity, which was connected from the main road to here, and that's why there is this kind of development in the area.
When I felt like it was adoption, yeah, I really questioned that, just because I used to tease people that told me they wanted to adopt kids. I would always tease and say, I can hardly love my biological children. How am I going to love adopted kids? And so it was with the fact that it was adoption, yeah, it was a little bit surprising.
And my immediate reaction was I could see in my mind's eye that my eyes were getting really big, but I refrained from actually doing it physically.
And then finally told Gary, because this whole time, I mean, I'm having conversations with him, but I'm not really like laying it out there what the Lord's doing. And so finally I say, I think the Lord's calling us to adopt some kids from like Africa.
Instead of saying anything negative, I really paused and in my head said, if I say anything negative, I have no idea what I'm going to miss out on. And so my response was, okay, what's the next step?
His first response was, did you hear an audible voice? And just joking, and I'm like, oh no. And we just talked about it, and he said, well, let's pray about it and see where it goes.
Thinking that if the Lord really didn't want us to do it, he would close doors. And he never did.
All kinds of doubt flooded my mind. It's like, I can hardly take care of my own kids. Well, how much less, how am I going to take care of more?
If you go through the government required reading, you'll never adopt any children because it's a horror story after horror story. If you read that stuff, you just won't do it. So I quit reading it and I just said, you know, if the Lord called us to do this, it's going to work out. I don't know how. And even if we have issues, we'll just work through it. When you go to adopt, it is a full-time commitment. And there are things that you have to get together here to provide to the U.S. government. And Cheryl took care of all this. So if I mess up what she did or minimize what she did, it's not on purpose because it was a lot. All this stuff had to be gotten together. Certified copies of birth certificates, the home study, the interview with our children, all that had to be done ahead of time. You get fingerprinted, you get back your I-600. It's basically a piece of paper from the government that says, congratulations, you can be parents. We thought that was hilarious because we already had 7 kids and it's like, well, now we're official. We can be parents based on the government requirements, so that's good.
We knew we wanted a boy younger than Nathaniel and we wanted a girl younger than Abigail. We just felt like that would be a good fit for our family. So when we talked to the social worker, that's what we told her, because you have to get a home study done.
And of course, our home study lady said, how many are you going to adopt? And we said 2. Well, I said 2. And she said, well, I'll put down 3. And I said, why? She said, you just never know. I said, no, we're adopting 2. And she said, well, I'll put down 3. And Cheryl just kind of pokes me and said, it's fine, just let her put 3 down. And I'm like, I don't know why she's putting 3 down. We're only adopting 2, so I don't know why she's putting 3 on the form.
Uganda, being that it is a third world country, the most hardest challenges that people face here, or what we face in Uganda, we are poor. We have resources, but the technology is very poor. Jobs are very scarce. They train job seekers, but not job creators. So everybody goes to school expecting to get a job that they can survive tomorrow. But to our dismay, you find that most people are on the streets, others are riding borders because of job what problem? They don't have jobs. Children lack school fees. And you find that even now some parents are getting discouraged of sponsoring their children to go to school because they know that they spend that money and after all, the child will not get a good job. Find that many people are not educated, they are vulnerable to diseases, they don't know how they can help themselves to withstand all that because they didn't go to school. Even when you go to the wells where people get water, they are very, very dirty. There are even animals go and share the same wells with people. HIV, the prevalence rate is very high. Many children are orphaned and they have nobody to help them, So there are very, very, very many challenges that we are facing.
Let's go. One, two, three, go. Let's go. 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, go. Let's go. Yeah. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
I'm old.
Yeah, that's heavy. You made it. Woo!
Yeah. This is Suubi's generator that we purchased when we opened the place, and unbeknownst to me, it was a 16-year-old generator, and we kind of got swindled by the people who sold it to us because I could have bought a brand new generator for what this cost. And it finally gave up the ghost a couple of months ago, so I'm here trying to take it apart to see if we can't fix it so that hopefully it's worth something as opposed to scrap metal. Okay, we got down to the head of the motor, and you have to remove all these head bolts, and there's about 20 of them. But the tool is cheap enough that we stripped all the cogs out of it, so it doesn't hold the bolt head anymore. Muchivi.
Sawa.
How? Oliotia said.
Gendi kitani. Oliotia tata.
I have no idea what you just said, but thank you. We were actually invited over the very first time by Christian Life Ministry for celebration, New Year's Eve celebration that they have, and we didn't know what it was, but we wanted to come and see it, and that's why we came the first time.
We also wanted to visit kids that we had sponsored. We ended up sponsoring 24 kids because we wanted to do something big, right? So we sponsored all these kids with this organization, and we were going to be able to meet them.
And since Cheryl was in the blog world, she contacted a lady who had 3 children she was trying to adopt, and she wanted us to go photograph them and film them and draw their handprints and their feet, so she knew how big they were and all that.
Going to Uganda, which, if you knew me, I'm petrified of flying and terrified, makes me sick to even think about it.
Every plane that comes into Uganda usually lands at like 10:30 or 11 or so. By the time you're through getting your bags and all that, it's around 11:30. It's almost midnight. And so by the time you get into Entebbe a little bit and down the road, it's pretty close to midnight, and there are just people everywhere.
When we came off the plane, the first thing that hit us was, I don't know if it was just there's smells.
Sensory overload of the smells, and you're like, what is that? And you're not even sure what it is.
But it was the smell of it, and then the people and all the different language and the voices, and so we get through there and we go out to where our luggage is, and it's more chaotic, and the noise was amazing, and it's just overwhelming.
The buildings, they are not well built, a lot of them. There's food hanging outside, like shacks, and you're like, do people eat that? Like, there's flies all over that. There's trash everywhere, and the smell, definitely. There's a very distinct smell when you land in Uganda, and it's very overwhelming compared to here. It's like clean air, but over there, the smell is probably one of the biggest things that I first notice every time I go there.
There's traffic everywhere. Big delivery trucks, large delivery trucks, big buses that carry lots of, like a big Greyhound bus. Well, then you have taxis that carry around 15 to 20 people. Boda-bodas, which are motorcycles carrying sometimes 3, 4 people, luggage and people, or beds and all kinds of things, and balancing it on the back. And then you have bicycles and people carrying all kinds of things on a bicycle that you're just like, you're shaking your head, how are they doing that? People walking, and so you have all this piled up in the same area trying to get somewhere. We went to this foster home where the kids were, and that's actually where we saw Kenneth, Juliet, and Sharon for the very first time.
I think I was about 9 or 10, somewhere there, I'm not sure, but if I remember well, I wasn't that big when I started.
We break rocks and carry rocks around and sell rocks to people. So
a lot of rocks, and you beat the rocks, but sometimes you get hurt. A lot of times you get hurt, and it's a very hard job, and you have to break them into like little pieces.
Break the rocks, and then after that we measure them up. Sometimes you can get higher to measure them, just putting them in the bucket.
A guy named Joseph was taking us there, and he pulls up to this house, and it actually has a sign out front that says AFAA, which is Americans for African Adoption.
They were like, okay, we're going to this place to see where we have kids, like to pick out, see who God leads us to adopt. And that's when I knew they were really serious, because before then I was like, oh, maybe, you never really know, because it's adoption. They always said, no, we have enough kids. So that's when we actually went, and that's when I knew they were really serious about it, because before then it's like, okay, sure.
And the whole time, I mean, everywhere I'm going at this point, I'm like looking at every child's face going, are you the one I'm supposed to adopt? I mean, it was just overwhelming. I don't think I felt that the whole time, but there were just these moments where you would just stop and think, I wonder if this is it.
And so there was the sign out front. It was a gated house. It was well kept.
I prayed on the way there. There's just this sense of, okay, Lord, this is, if you're going to show us our kids, if you want us to adopt, it was the same prayer. If you want us to adopt, please show us our kids. Because I wanted to make absolutely certain it was him. I did not want to mess this up.
There was cans of toothbrushes and toothpaste and that they said the children used. There was a kitchen area. The mothers were cooking lunch at the time that we were there.
And there was a lot of kids there. And you're thinking, oh my goodness, they're all so cute. Like, oh, I want all of them. And they started like singing songs to us, and we're sitting there, and I'm like, oh my goodness, one of these is gonna end up to be my siblings.
I can't even tell you how many kids were in this yard. There were, at least 30 kids running around, having fun. We bought soda pop for them. They were having a good time. And they started, they like to entertain. So they were singing Ugandan songs, and it was a lot of fun. And we were all sitting there, and then Kenneth lined up on one end, and Juliet lined up on the other, and there were these small kids in between, and they were kind of the coordinators, making sure they stayed in line and singing the songs right and all that. And Kenneth ended up singing a part of a song. It was a Ugandan song. We had no idea what he was singing about.
It's a song. It's called Slim Burade Buzibunyo, which means AIDS is a bad disease. It's a song that everyone would sing. If you're gonna sing a song, you're gonna sing the exact words. So yes, they say the song kind of goes into, I was sad when my mom died. I was sad when my dad died. I don't want that to happen again, so people help us, right? But I wasn't exactly particularly talking about my dad.
The guy that was with us told me that Kenneth was singing a song about his father passing away from AIDS, because while Kenneth was singing this song, he started weeping.
I promise you, I don't know how this happened, but sometimes I just go back and think this is God. Like when you're about to cry, you feel it. Like you feel you're about to cry. I didn't feel a thing. The tears just started rolling down my eyes and started crying, but I couldn't feel anything. I didn't feel it. I don't know what happened. I just felt water running out of my eyes. And then I looked at Mom Cheryl, and they're also crying.
When they were singing, this overwhelming sense of, that's my son, was in my head, and I was freaking out. You couldn't tell that, but I was thinking, oh my gosh, that could be our son.
I remember specifically asking the guy, Joseph, I pointed to Kenneth and I said, what is that young man's name? He was playing drums at the time. And he looked and he said, that one over there? I said, yeah, the one playing the drums. And he said, oh, that is Kenneth.
Me and Catherine were talking about it, and we were talking about Kenneth, and we were like, yeah, I think he's our brother. And then my dad walked over and he's like, what are y'all talking about? And we're like, oh, that boy over there playing the drum. We're like, really feel like he's gonna be our brother. And Dad was like, no way, me too.
It just touched our hearts, and we all said, Kenneth is our brother. That's all there is to it.
At that moment, when they started crying, there's something, I felt that connection, and the way Elizabeth and Catherine, they were there at that time, the way they were looking at me, the way they looked at me, I felt something. I was like, there's something going on, I guess it was God working. And I looked over at Juliet, and Juliet is doing the same thing, but the weird thing is when we're talking about it, whenever we're done, she didn't feel a thing. It's like, because when I'm about to cry, I can feel the tears coming, and I feel like, okay, I'm about to cry. I didn't feel a thing.
we get back to the hotel and we're talking about the whole thing, and everybody just knows Kenneth is, the girls, I know he's my brother, and Gary and I felt confirmation about it. And so back in the hotel, I pull out my camera and we start looking through all my photos, and we're just praying, Lord, if there's a daughter here, show her to us.
There was this other little girl that just was always in the picture. She was right there. She was holding Cheryl's hand. She had no two front teeth. She had a gappy mouth. Her two front teeth were out, but she was always there in the picture.
Even if I was trying not to take a picture of her, she was in this picture, or she was in the background, or she was, just right on the edge. Precious, precious little girl. And the more pictures we looked at, I was just drawn to her.
Kenneth put down the floors, then my mom surprised me. I think it was the day after yesterday with the chair. She told me to go upstairs, then she brought this in.
So she prayed and prayed, and this little girl just kept touching her heart, and she didn't know why. And that little girl turned out to be Sharon.
It wasn't as black and white as Kenneth. I mean, Kenneth, it was so, there was a moment, but with Sharon, it's just like it fell into place. And so we ended up choosing her, and we had no idea at the time that she and Kenneth were related. We had zero clue that they were actually true brother and sister.
Juliet, she was one of those God moments, because Cheryl just said, that girl, she's touched my heart, and I don't know why. And I just kept saying, I think she's too old, and we're only here to adopt 2, not 3.
The thought of adoption wasn't in my mind. I just wanted to come visit US and see how it looks and get the truth, and that's all I was hoping for.
I think it just wouldn't get off my brain.
I don't know, I guess because I was praying so hard and God was trying to shake her, and yeah, I think it was all God's plans, and he wanted it to be like that, and he did whatever he could do. He did whatever he had to do to get her to say yes.
Juliet just kept coming back to Cheryl's mind and heart, and she just couldn't get it out of her head, and she just kept saying, I don't know what it is about her, but the Lord is just saying she needs to be added.
But Juliet, the older girl, she just was on my heart. I could not shake this feeling that she's an older girl. Nobody's going to adopt her. Older children just don't get adopted easily in Uganda.
I was praying the whole time, asking God, can't you do something here? Do something. So when I was like, trying to forget about it, and then they came and they're like, well, she wants to adopt you. So I was just too excited. I was like, okay, I'm finally leaving Uganda, because that was always our prayer. We always wanted to leave Uganda.
So she was just on my heart, and it drove me crazy. And I think I finally asked Gary, why, let's see if we can adopt her. Let's find out what her story is and see if we can adopt her. And because we had already been approved for 3, which was kind of funny, and I think he actually probably said something like, I knew we shouldn't have been approved for 3. And it wasn't, he was playing. He was totally open to doing whatever God called us to do.
We adopt Kenneth. After he gets home and is here, he tells us that was all staged. The guy that was working with AFAA had rented the house for just a day, had brought in the bunk beds, brought in the toothpaste and toothbrushes and the furniture.
Well, we didn't know that he was planning on lying to them that we lived there, so we thought we were just coming, saying to the people and living. And that was the whole plan.
It was made like a home, like No one had been there before, but they made it look like, you know, we had a closet. They were like, hang your clothes over there, put your shoes there, so in like a certain order. And we were like, oh my gosh, we're gonna get to live here, but we didn't know what was going on.
He put up everything like we lived in the house, but we didn't live in the house. We just showed up one day and we had to stay for a whole day and then leave in the middle of the night because he didn't want the people to know that we don't live there.
Joseph had come by in his car to the rock quarry and said, hey, there's going to be a party. Who wants to come to the party? And of course, a bunch of the kids said, party? You bet, I'm in.
We didn't find out what was going on. We were like, what? We bought clothes and we didn't even change into them. We got shoes. We thought we were going to spend the night there until they left, like 30 minutes later after the visitors left. We had to pack our stuff and leave.
That circumstance that brought Kenneth, Juliet, and Sharon to the home where we first saw them. And to us, that's God's hand. I mean, there's no way to orchestrate that. It's just something that was divinely intended to happen. And that's what brought them there that day, was that party.
So he comes after that happens, after 2 weeks, he comes with the pictures telling us these parents are going to adopt you. And then he finds out that actually my name isn't Kenneth. And he tells us, well, you know, he said this, white people can pick you. They don't like, you know, changing things because then they'll think we're lying if you tell them this and you tell them this, and then it's like, what's the truth? So we're gonna stick with Kenneth because we have your name on the papers already.
He's in the dining room and he says, I've got something to tell you. And I'm like, okay, what? And he says, my name's not Kenneth. And I said, seriously? What's your name? He said, well, it's Edison. And I said, Edison? But that's your older brother. He said, no, my older brother is actually Kenneth. I'm Edison.
Told them you're Kenneth, and now they know you're Kenneth, so we can't change it. And now he was like, from now you're Kenneth. And it took me a while to start writing that name on the books and stuff, because it wasn't really my name. And then it took me a while because my mom would be calling the other Kenneth. I'm like, what? And
he said, do you remember the guy Joseph that took you to the home that day? I said, yes. He said, well, he came to our house and he asked his mother, Grace, to bring Kenneth to him. And so Grace brings her Kenneth, which is the older brother. And Joseph says, no, not that one. Do you have another son? She said, yes, I have 2 younger sons. He says, well, bring the others here, let me see them. And so she brings the other 2, and one's little, and then there's Kenneth. And he says, this one. She said, no, this one is Edison. He told Grace and everybody at that time, he said, I have told the Americans that this young man's name is Kenneth. So because I don't want to look bad in front of them, and if we tell them that I made a mistake, they may not want to adopt him. So from that point forward, his schoolwork and everything else, he was known as Kenneth.
No, because her birthday is, she's 11. Oh, wow.
My birthday is not really January.
I mean, she's only 2 years younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
We went back for our court date, and when the guy came to drop him off, they told me the truth. They said, we can't lie to you anymore. We need to tell you that we have a mom. And at the time, they didn't tell me they had a dad. That'd have been helpful information. But they had a mom, and that she was afraid that if I knew that we would not take care of them.
Yeah, Cheryl was devastated. She called me on the phone from here in Uganda and was just weeping and just uncontrollably sobbing, and I couldn't figure out what was the issue. And she said, she basically through her tears said, they have a mother. And I basically said, what?
Joseph saying, you want this? And yes, I wanted it. I mean, it's like, who doesn't want to get better? It's like, I sleep hungry. I don't get enough food. I don't get enough. I mean, I have the same pair of clothes I wear every time. Sometimes it'll be even my mom's clothes, and people make fun of me. Yes, of course I want to get better, and so I didn't really care about the truth at that moment. So I went along with it, and it was like, all right, so this is what you have to do. They want to help poor people. Your parents are gonna be dead for you now. Then you don't have any parents. You live with your aunt right here. And
she repeated herself. They have a mother, and I said, who is it? And she said, it's Grace, who we thought was just the caretaker. And so it was a heart-wrenching decision to know what to do.
So the next day we met with Grace and heard her whole story, and it was like they'd never even been a family unit. Their entire life was just wrought with hardship, and they would build their house would fall down, they couldn't find enough food. Grace had been near death multiple times. I mean, just hard. It was just really hard. And so I told her at that point, I said, I will put your kids in school, and I'll put your kids in school, pay for their education, and I'll pay and make sure you have food. Do you want me to do that?
And it was Grace who was adamant that she wanted her children to be adopted by us and come to America.
So we finalized the adoptions, and the judge wrote, at the time you had to write in the ruling that the children could immigrate to the U.S. For whatever reason, he would not allow Sharon to immigrate.
When Cheryl went to court and she was told that Sharon was not allowed to leave the country with her, Grace broke down and cried and begged the judge, please let this woman adopt my little girl and take her to America. And the judge told her point blank, he said, you could cry an ocean of tears and I will never let that child leave this country.
I think he was, because he thought I was little and maybe he just didn't want me to go.
That was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, because Sharon's my child. I'm, legally responsible for her, but not only legally, just I'm her mom, but I had to leave her in Uganda because the judge said she couldn't immigrate.
So 6 months had elapsed since we got Juliet and Kenneth home. And so Cheryl went back and she stayed, and she got our attorney to try and file a motion with a new judge. And the judge that we saw basically said, I am not going to rule on changing a motion of another judge.
This judge said, you're her guardian, which makes us legally responsible for her, but we can't immigrate with her, which means she's not allowed to leave the country.
And so Cheryl basically called me and said, we have to go back to the original judge. It's the only way we can do it. And I said, well, we'll just pray that the judge's heart is changed, that the Lord will soften his heart, and then he'll allow her to come home. And so she sent out a prayer request, a bunch of people, that's what we need to pray for, is to change that judge's heart. Because he was adamant. He was so, Cheryl describes him as just a very gruff person, and the way he said it, it's like, he's not going to change his mind. But she went back to court, saw him, got an appointment, talked to the judge. She said he just seemed different.
We always say that our kids are in the Lord's hands, but your children are in God's hands, because the judge that said he would never change his mind, when we went back to court with him, is when he's the one that actually changed it and said, yes, she can immigrate home with us.
The only way to explain that is God's intervention in that man's heart, because he was adamant she would never leave the country. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, bam, he changes his mind, and Sharon gets to come home.
And we get to the airport, and I had all these thoughts in mind, and all I had from the TV and radio, how people are dying when they get in the plane and they fall in the ocean or something and die.
When I looked at it, when we got to the airport, and I looked at that thing, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm actually going to be sitting in that thing. I'm going to be up there. I was just excited.
So Kenneth goes to the bathroom. I was sitting the whole time. I had told myself I'm not going to the restroom until we get there. I can hold it.
People say different stories. So they said, and I had a story, someone said a story that when they get like over the ocean, they open up the toilet and everything will like just pour down. And so when I flashed and the noise, and it made this weird noise, I freaked out. I freaked out. The sign said, I think it said pool. I was like pushing outside instead of pulling because I was freaking out. The noise is still going on, like sounds like it's sucking. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die in here.
But it was a very interesting ride.
You know, you put 3 Ugandan kids in your all-American family and you're gonna make a statement. So, but yeah, we thought that was it. We thought, okay, yes, we've arrived at what God's called us to do.
We came to Uganda and saw some children that we fell in love with and pursued in an adoption that lasted 3.5 years from start to finish. But they're home in our house, they're great kids, and it just added a new adventure to our life that is incredible. And this aspect of it all was born out of our issues trying to adopt, because adoption for us, like I said, was 3.5 years. It shouldn't have taken but 9 months. And so we said, there's a way to do this right. There's a way to do it so that people aren't deceived. And our concept of doing it better was to basically just do it ourselves, because we didn't think anybody else would really catch on to the vision. And that's where Suubi was born, on a napkin.
Because that's when I told you in the kitchen that there was just a different vision in my head.
Right.
And he's like, get it out of your head. Write it down.
Right.
And that's when I wrote it on. We had this napkin and we're standing, I think we were cooking dinner. And I just scribbled it out on this piece of paper, and it was a home and a school and a church. And the process was, okay, well, we want these kids, what else can we do for them? And then it was, well, if we're gonna be in a village, then we need to minister to the village. So how can we do that? Well, let's build a school, because the kids living in our home will need to go to school. But we wanna be able to do something for the village, so let's open it up to the village through sponsorship. We can have these other kids come to the school. And then it was like, well, wait a minute, we have to build a church because these people need to know Jesus first. That's even more important than education.
Welcome to Suubi. This is our main entry gate here and the road that leads up to Suubi. We're about 25 miles north of Kampala in an area that we call Bafumbaswa. And there's about 168 families that live around here that we try to minister to.
At the time, I looked at like 10 acres. They showed me 20 acres. At one point, they showed 360 acres. I had called him and said, I'm not qualified to do this. I'm way out of my element. You know, I don't know what to do. And he said, I'm praying for you, and I trust that the Lord is going to show you what we need to do.
Right.
And that was the day we went to this one piece of land, and when we were walking up this little path to this land is when I heard the Lord say, this is it. Muchibi's the guy, when we went to look at land, Joseph had taken us out to look at land, and we had looked at, I don't know, 3 or 4 places. And when we came to this place, it was actually the last day we could look at land. And Muchibi lives on the corner before you enter where Suubi is. And Joseph just asked, hey, can you show us this land? And so he got his machete and basically just cut a path through the grass so we could look.
Chikulakwana just chikuze kutuwe twakisengera mu gasibikiri bekiri kutwafuna mu Suubi project neke genda nekyongera ko maso twali ba mukwano mukutana funa omuzungu yajja netumuguza bamukwano gyange
mwali bamukwano n'abazungu
bazungu bwe bajja wano ffe twabatawo ne tubalambuzaawo kwaliko Bukenya ne Musumba Kiyaga basanyukira kuba bwe bamala okugula bandekera ekifo ekyo nkirabire nga bamaze okigula oluvannyuma lw'emyaka 3.
It was just such a blessing to have someone there that was looking out for us or for our stuff. So we asked our guys, we didn't want to give money just because we wanted it to be a tangible gift, I guess, and we weren't sure what they would do with money. So we asked them, could we give him food or, what did he need? And they said 10 sheets to finish the roof on his home because he has quite a few children, but he didn't have, he had one room that was covered and then he had another room that didn't have a roof on it.
Bwe baamala okuba mikwano gyange ne bandekera okukuuma eriya n'engikuuma bulungi ne bandepa sitowa okukuuma ebintu byabwe byazimba Suubi project nga nze sitowa kipa n'ebikuuma bulungi ne bampa ekirabo ekyo.
Okay. He decided to write down the word because it is a scripture in the Bible that in God all things are possible.
So the next time we went, he had the roof on, and then he had painted, with God, all things are, it was supposed to be possible, but he could only get P.O. So with God, all things are Pope.
Oh, sorry. Na kozesa ekigambo ekyo.
He used that word.
Wali wendafuna emikwano gyange. Unafuna Sherry.
When he got Cheryl.
Mkwano gwange nendokoka.
A friend, and he got saved.
Okay.
So he became born again after getting connected to Cheryl.
And one time I asked one of our guys, who is he? And he said, oh, he's our neighbor, but he always wonders why the Mzungu are doing what, why are you here? He always asks, why does she come back? Why is she building this? And I think through that they were able just to say, well, because she loves Jesus.
Kuba abantu bali mu byakusamira ebyo kunywa mwenge nga tebalina buvunaanyizibwa eri munne mwenye bwoba n'eddiini kusobozesa okuba nga muno omuwa ekitiibwa mutambulira munne muno bali takubuuza osobola omubuuza kuba eddiini ekwalamu n'okwagala.
An American citizen can't buy land in Uganda, so we needed to create a corporation. And so to create a corporation, we had to have bank accounts, all these things that are not my area at all. I'm like, this is Gary's area, he should be here. But we had to come up with a name, we had to come up with a bank account, we had to form a corporation for this. And Gary and I had talked about the whole thing about hope. Jesus is our hope, and we want to give people hope. And if you have hope, even the slightest bit of hope, you can accomplish almost anything.
Welcome to the Suubi Church. This facility is used not only as a church on Sundays, but it's also used for our school for a gathering place for lunch. We also have meetings during the week. Anytime there's a Wednesday night service or choir practice, something like that's associated with the church, they also meet here. And it's also been used as a community meeting gathering place for the community to come and meet for whatever functions they need it for.
We asked the guys, so what is hope in Uganda? And they said it's Suubi.
Like here where we are, it was a bush. And there was nothing you can see, which you see today. Like when you see from the main road to here, like the roads you're seeing, now it looks like a village, because Suubi has done a lot in improving the lives of the people. We do the roads. There was no road. I mean, it was very horrible and it was scary. As we started constructing, I was told that let's have a church. And my perspective was different, because I had seen the village and I didn't know even there were people who will come and attend the church. And Cheryl said, no, we need a church. We need a church where the kids will come to know Jesus and the people in the community. And we started the church. My passion, is seeing many coming to the Lord and seeing many lives changed, seeing children like the orphans living a happy life. I didn't know that it will have a very big impact in the community, but it has changed a lot of people. People have changed, their lives completely changed spiritually. So many people have been blessed, so many people have been changed. But I don't know how to answer this. Can you pass the second? Okay. Honestly, I don't know how to answer this.
Most of the kids don't know how to swim. They were never taught how to swim. So the parents tell us never to go next to the pond or next to the water because we'll drown and die. That's why the baptism is kind of scary, because it's all water and it's kind of like a pond. And there's a possibility that you might fall in and die. So we're scared of dying in water.
Yesu Kristo bwali butya?
Obulamu bwawe bwali bubi nnyo. Nali musajja nga ndi munywi wa mwenge.
He was homeless and he could sleep in a house which is like one of the pigs. After drinking, he comes back and lie here. He sleeps here.
Abaana babasuulanga nga tebalina kye babafaako. Kati nali nga mpulira abaana babonaabona, abaana bakola bati. Nze kennyini ne mbagamba abaana mubaleete baleme kubonaabona nga nkyali ke tunaalyangako nabo ke banaalyangako.
Mu bulwadde bwe
wamuzaala otya bw'otyo?
Gerard namuzaala n'obulwadde bwe obwo ku mutwe gwako nga kuliko akabubi ka kyenvu nga musimbyemu n'obwa bbulaaka bubiri.
Because he was isolated, discriminated against, and couldn't interact with other kids and all other people.
Embeera gye nalimu yali okubeera nti nali sikyafaananika nga ninganga atakyalina muntu. Kati nengamba mu mutima gwange nti okufuna obulamu obupya obujja nteekwa kudda eri Yesu Kristo, era ne mukakasa nti yasobola okunzija mu buli buzibu bwonna bwenkola ki bwendimu. Era yembeera eno okubeera nti nfaananako bwe nti
embeera eyo yakukaka
yankaka nga ndaba senseri ng'ekomye eno sigenda n'eno sigenda nga ndaba biganye konze nteekwa kudda eri Kristo okubeera ku Yesu Kristo Mukama waffe
era obuzibu weebuli kubanga wendabira obuzibu obusobozi buba tebukyaliwo kinyanguyira kubanga bali sinna bwe mba mbasuula era nteekwa okuba nabo Mukama bw'aba ayagadde okutuwa ekyokulya ng'akituwa sikirabamu buzibu kuba guba musaayi gwange sirina bwe ngukola ki bwe ngusuula
tekyansanyusa naye nti olw'okuba embeera twali tetulina busobozi ate nga ne taata we tafaayo twagendako e Mulago.
We have a public hospital called Mulago, and to go to Mulago Hospital you have to give bribes to doctors to give you a service. Be it is a free public government hospital, you have to give there a bribe. And yet, being that they are poor, they had nothing to give to doctors.
Nawulira bulungi ddala era ndi musanyufu eri Suubi. Naye lwakuba nti mbeera eno mbeera kuba mbi naye nalibadde nange nfunawo ko kyenkolawo okwebaza Suubi naye olw'embeera bange
lwa bano bagundi
mama wawe
kati gyali bw'ati era
kati basalawo ne bagamba bo wasalawo nogaba bazzukulu bano babaleete babeere nange
kitaabwe nga munywi wa mwenge abagobaganya basula mu nsiko bakola batya
ate omu yali asulana ku lubalaza
Suubi anyambidde ddala kubanga seesobola anyambye mu byonna ne bazzukulu bange okusoma kulya byonna nnyamba
naye ndaba nti buli kyenkwatako kyenkwatako Mukama akiwa omukisa
mbukati embisi osobola ogitwalamu eri ennyumba mwe wasulanga
What took place is we built one orphan home, and we wanted to see what kind of construction, the quality, and all that before we really, did any more work. We wanted to see what we were getting for our money.
Right.
And when I went over there in October with Cheryl, we were satisfied that we were getting a good product, and so we started the second children's home, the church, the office, the school, the latrines, and the wall around the compound, all at once.
And then he left me.
And then I left and said, good luck. Okay, this is the Suubi school. So we have 4 classrooms. They're all the same, and they're housing P1, P2, P3, and P4. 5 meets in another building.
We dream big as Suubi. We don't think we'll stop at primary. We believe in our God that our children, we really want to groom them in a God-fearing way, whereby we want to take them stage by stage and watch them grow up. So we believe that after P7, we would want them to be in the secondary school where we would teach them more about God and life skills.
I want it to be known as a top quality school.
Yeah, the goal for Suubi Primary School is that we will be able to educate our kids in a more Western, with a more Western education, so that once they go through, and we dream of having a secondary school and a trade school, vocational school, but we want them to have the opportunity to go to college anywhere in the world.
I'll look at the state of our country. It's a third world country, and the community where our school is, most of the people are illiterate. Right now, if someone is not educated in Uganda, it's a hard knock life for them.
That's going to be the change of that country, is for the education of the children there is what's going to change the direction of that country.
None of our children come by bus. They all foot to school, And the fact that we want them at school at 7 in the morning so that we can do the morning devotion and morning preps, you find that it's hard for them to wake up very early at 6 because that time it's night and they have to pass through valleys, others pass through forests, so it's really hard for them. They come very far.
And so all that construction happened at once, and of course they were stunned because nothing in Uganda gets done. They figured, you know, we'd build this and we'd build another little home and then we'd build this, and it would take years for all that to come to fruition. And
I think they even doubted that we'd finish it
at all. Yes, exactly, because so many projects, I mean, there are scattered projects all over Uganda that are started and then just abandoned. This area is back behind our first school building, and this area is meant to contain our second school. We'd have 8 classrooms. The first class is actually like what we call a kindergarten class. They call it a top class here. So we'd have P1 through P7 and a top class for younger children.
I think that it's brought more opportunity to the village, the water wells, the electricity, the church, the school. We have so many kids in our school that have never gone to school.
Right.
Never had that, even the chance of going to school.
Right.
You find that through these kids coming to Suubi project, to Suubi primary school, they are accessing their needs, and there is no way you can express actually Jesus' love except by helping the needy people, because they are greatly in need and they lack support. You know, most families are vulnerable, so most of them like missed Christmas prizes. Some of them didn't have clothing, but because our sponsors have been able to get for them, it has been a pleasure. So through the hope that they are extending to the communities, children are reviving, their hope is restored, you know. Always when people hear about Jesus, they expect good things from Jesus. So if somebody is in need and you don't help them out to overcome their problems and challenges they're experiencing, they will not see the love of Jesus. They see the love of Jesus through actions.
I get phone calls at 3 in the morning. I get texts.
At all hours.
All hours, yeah. That's a challenge.
Well, and sometimes there are emergencies and you're got to get out of bed and go
2 nights ago,
write a letter,
out of bed.
or answer a phone call or do something. You know, the generator's broken, the car's broken and won't run. You know, someone's sick or someone in the school got hurt. You know, someone threw a rock and put one of the little kid's eyes out. And he needs
that literally happened. We had a boy, one of the first school sessions, one of our children at Suubi threw a rock and hit a kid in the eye. We had to send the kid to Kenya to get surgery.
To save his eye.
Because we're responsible. And, yeah, we had to save his eye. We've been, lied to and deceived and manipulated. I mean, it's all been there. It would have been really easy a lot of times to just say, we're done. One of the biggest things that's a challenge to me is that my heart, that the Lord gave us this vision for Suubi, and we've hired these people and we tell them what the vision is, and we want them to become a part of this vision. We want them to feel purpose in what's going on there. And sometimes you realize they're just there for a job.
Right.
And unfortunately, they're not even real faithful sometimes. It's hard for them to catch the vision. I think we have some that do, but
for the most part,
they're taking advantage of us.
Yeah, they're just working, and they'll work as little as they can get away with sometimes and get paid.
Yeah.
And that's disheartening.
Yeah, makes me sad.
And it's difficult.
Because you start feeling like, wait a minute, these are your people.
Well,
These are your
we want it
kids.
to be a
This is your
family.
future.
We want the family
Yeah.
to rally around the cause and the vision. And when they don't, that's really it's painful. It's painful to see and to watch. God is looking into people's hearts. And it's nothing outwardly that they're doing, but He can see the intent of their heart. And I believe we were just at a place where God could see our heart, know that we were open to it, and He, knew we would say yes before we even knew we would say yes.
Yeah. It's this overwhelming sense of gratitude and love for my Savior that just rises up, and it's just like, I know I don't have to do anything, but I want to because of what He's done.
To me, it's just a joy feeling like you're in God's will, that you're doing what He asks.
Yeah.
And
no matter how hard it is.
How hard it is, it's right.
Yeah.
It's just, until He says, stop doing that, you need to do something
And
different.
we've asked, just like, Lord,
yeah,
are you
Lord,
sure?
are you sure you still want us to do this? Are you positive?
So wait, I'm going to stop right here. Do you want me to go further?
I'm listening closer. Are you sure?
When people get to know God and love Him, they will be able to feel the compassion and have a heart for suffering Ugandans. The gospel will change many people's hearts to know how because they fear God, they will be able to help others because they fear God. But without God, no one can be able to mind about others. People are selfish, they are. So it is this gospel that we are preaching, and that's what we are playing.
We're on the Suubi soccer field. What we're here for is a celebration which is taking place starting New Year's Eve and goes all the way through New Year's Day at about 7 a.m. And there'll be preaching and praying and singing, all for the Lord and His glory. Last year we had 10,000 people come, and I've been told that we expect to have many more. What we're going to do is set up a bunch of chairs. They're just plastic chairs that you'd have outside, and they're pretty much going to cover the whole soccer field. And we've got a stage set up as well for all the preachers that'll be preaching, the choirs that'll be singing will happen up on the stage, and people will come from all around this community, and they'll gather here for the celebration.
Every witchcraft, body blow has been broken a few minutes ago. You're now people to say about it. God is gonna pick you up. Na yemo kama agenda kuyimusa. And show you like another. Akoze segaka sa and it take to cities. Akutware mo mibuka and it take to the nation of the world. Akutware mawanga against and make you woman stand in the gap. Akoze so imirina mo chichu and make a prophet of God. Akoze segana and make a verse of God. Akoze say Mukamona golokoka. Lord, you are right. Oh, Sansiganade. Show mercy and grace. Mukamona golokoka. Lord, you are right. Oh, Mageti Saganade. Show me favor. Yogera Rigaberio. Speak your word. Mukabe Mukamona golokoka.
I'm a petroleum engineer and worked in the oil and gas business for the past 30 years. Never during any of that time did I ever see myself as a preacher or a leader of any sort. But when I said yes to doing Suubi, I think God, He equips you for what you're going to experience no matter what it is. I was pushed so far outside my comfort zone, I can't even describe it. It's a function of obedience, I think. For me, it's, you know, are you going to obey what the Lord has asked you to do, yes or no? And if it's yes, then you go do it. You don't ask questions, you just kind of start putting one foot in front of the other, and it's just a faith walk at that point.
Thank you, Lord, that it's going to be larger than they would anticipate. It's going to be a greater work than they would even consider. And it's beyond you to be able to bring it to pass. But it's the Lord who shall accomplish it all for His purpose. And just as we are His workmanship, so this will be His workmanship. So God be blessed through you from here on, more powerfully than ever before.
Wow. Suubi in the future is exciting. It's almost like a community in itself, in that we would love to have a primary school, a secondary school, vocational schools, you know, the
job opportunities.
Job opportunity. Yes, we'd like to build the bakery. We have a soap machine. We'd like to start that up. Have several businesses that benefit the community, that draw people into that area, and then that they can have the Suubi experience. They can have the hope. You know, the church will be there to minister to them, and you know, to show the love of Jesus in every possible way.
And it going forth into the village, which is happening. I mean, that's already happening, and we see the fruit of that. And then from there, it goes into the other communities, which goes into that country, and ultimately into the entire continent. Why not?